I wasn't invited to the celebration. Not just any celebration, my son's 10th wedding anniversary. Held at the farmhouse I gave them. The one I poured my savings into, the one built from my hands, my memories, my marriage. And now, I wasn't even welcome on the porch. The message came from Chloe. Please understand, Lorraine. It's just close family this time. Close family, and somehow I didn't make the list. That's when I knew. They didn't just take my home. They erased me from it. It was a Thursday morning. I was folding laundry, watching the news in the background, just like I did every week. Nothing special, nothing different. Until my phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Chloe. Hi, Lorraine. Just letting you know, we're keeping the anniversary dinner small this year. Just close family. Hope you understand. I stared at those words longer than I care to admit. Just close family. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of them building a life together, and they were celebrating that in the very house Richard and I built, brick by brick, year by year. And I wasn't invited. I sat down on the edge of the couch, towel still in my lap, trying to make sense of it. Not angry, just confused. Hurt. I mean, Jason is my only son. I was there for their wedding. I made the centerpieces by hand. I gave them that house as a gift after Richard passed. I told them, start fresh, build your memories here. They said I'd always have a place, that the house would always be open. Your family, Chloe said. You'll always have a room here. But now, I wasn't even worth a seat at their table. It's strange how something as small as a text message can open your eyes. I thought about the last few months, Jason canceling our lunch dates, Chloe handling more and more of my mail and bills. You don't need to worry about these things, Lorraine, she'd say. It's easier if I just take care of it. At the time, I didn't question it. I was tired. I thought they were trying to help. But now, sitting there in my own living room, something felt different. Like I had been gently pushed out of the picture without even noticing. That house, they didn't just live in it. They took it over, slowly, quietly. And now I was on the outside looking in. I didn't reply to the message. What would I even say? Thanks for the heads up, but I'll stay home and pretend I'm not heartbroken? No. I just turned the phone face down on the table and sat there for a long time. I looked around at my small living room. The old armchair Richard used to fall asleep in, the photo of Jason in his high school graduation cap, still smiling like he had the world in his hands. Where did that boy go? I stepped outside to the back porch. The wind was picking up. The roses I planted last spring had bloomed without me really noticing. They were beautiful, wild, untamed. Maybe a little like me, at least the version of me I used to be. I rocked slowly in the porch chair, letting the air fill my lungs. I thought about Richard, what he'd say if he were here. He always saw things clearly, quicker than I did. He would have told me not to hand over the house so easily. He would have seen through the polite smiles. But I didn't. I believed them. I wanted so badly to stay connected, to feel like I still mattered. Now I wasn't so sure I did. I don't think the pain came all at once. It was more like a slow drip. Little things adding up until the bucket finally spilled. A forgotten phone call, a canceled visit, a dinner party I wasn't welcome at. They didn't say they didn't love me. They didn't have to. They just stopped showing it. And in that moment, sitting on my porch with the wind brushing against my face, I realized something that hurt more than the message itself. They didn't forget to invite me. They decided not to. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. And whether they knew it or not, I heard it loud and clear. They thought I'd accept it. That I'd stay quiet. That I'd keep being the helpful, gentle mother-in-law who never asked for anything. The one who gave and never pushed back. But something changed that day. Something inside me. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I wasn't blind anymore either. They'd drawn a line. I saw it now, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be on their side of it. The day after the message, I tried to go about things like normal. I did the dishes, I cleaned out the fridge. I even sat down to start a puzzle I'd been meaning to finish for weeks. But my hands wouldn't stay still. I'd place one piece, then forget where I was, just staring at the box. My mind kept drifting back to that text, over and over, like a record with a scratch in it. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I kept telling myself, maybe it really was just a small gathering. Maybe they wanted to keep it quiet. Maybe they were overwhelmed. But deep down, I knew. That wasn't the reason. I just didn't want to be the kind of mother who assumed the worst. That afternoon, I called my friend Jean. Jean and I have been friends for more than 30 years. We raised our boys at the same time. We went through marriages, losses, late-night phone calls when we couldn't sleep. And Jean, she never sugarcoated anything. That's probably why I hesitated to call her, because I already knew what she'd say, but I needed someone to talk to. She answered on the second ring. "Lorraine?" she said, her voice warm and steady like always. "You all right?" I didn't answer right away. My voice caught a little in my throat. I didn't expect to feel so embarrassed. That's what it was, really. More than hurt. I was ashamed. Ashamed that my own son didn't want me there. Ashamed that I had handed over my home and been left with nothing but silence. "I got a message from Chloe," I finally said. "They're having a dinner for their anniversary. I'm not invited." Jean didn't say anything for a second. I heard her shift the phone. Then she sighed. Not surprised, not shocked, just sad. "They've been pulling away for a while, haven't they?" she said quietly. That's when the tears came. I didn't sob. I didn't fall apart, but I felt the burn behind my eyes, that tightness in my chest. It wasn't just about the dinner, it was everything I hadn't wanted to admit for the past 2 years, all catching up at once. "They always say I'm family, they say I'm part of things," I said, "but I feel like I've been slowly erased." Jean didn't rush to comfort me. She didn't offer empty words. She let the silence sit, like someone who understood that grief needs space. "I think they've been planning this," she said after a while. "Planning what?" "To make sure you're not in the picture anymore." I blinked. "Jean." Not in a cruel way, not like a villain in a movie, but Chloe, she's smart, she's careful. I've seen the way she talks to you. Always polite, always controlled, but always one step ahead, always positioning. It stung, hearing it out loud, but part of me knew she was right. "You gave them the house, didn't you?" Jean asked. I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. "Yes. After Richard passed, I wanted Jason to have a solid place, to raise a family. I thought it would keep us close." Jean sighed again, and I could hear the frustration in her voice now, not at me, but at how predictable this all felt. "And ever since then, you've been giving them space, letting them lead, being respectful?" I didn't want to overstep. "No, of course not, because you're decent. But Lorraine, do you know what happens when you keep shrinking to make room for other people?" I stayed quiet. "They start believing you belong in the background." That line hit me like a slap. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. I had shrunk myself down for years. Skipped vacations to babysit their dog, paid for their student loans when they said money was tight. Helped Chloe organize her home office every spring. Always giving, always smiling, always saying, "Of course, honey, whatever you need." And they let me. "Have you checked your accounts lately?" John asked suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "Your bank accounts, retirement, property documents, anything with your name on it." I let Chloe handle most of that. She said it was easier for tax reasons. There was a long pause on the line. "Lorraine, I need you to listen to me," Jean said. Her voice changed. It wasn't casual anymore. It was sharp, protective. "You need to log into every account you can remember. Look at the history. Look at the names. Make sure everything is still yours." My heart started to beat faster. "You think they'd—" "I think Chloe is smart," Jean interrupted, "and I think she knows you trust her. That's a dangerous combination." I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't. But suddenly I was remembering things. Little things. Payments I didn't recognize but assumed were fine. Passwords I handed over without a second thought. Chloe saying, "Don't worry, I've got it covered." Again and again. "I'll check," I said softly. John didn't say good or "I told you so." She just said, "Call me back after you do." We hung up. I sat in the quiet for a long time, just me and the ticking of the kitchen clock. The air felt heavier now, like the truth was sitting next to me, waiting for me to finally stop pretending not to see it. I walked to the hallway closet and pulled out the dusty folder where I kept my bank paperwork. I opened my laptop. My hands trembled a little as I typed in my password. It had been months since I last looked. Everything looked normal at first, but that was the problem. It looked normal. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind kept going back to what Jean said. Her voice echoed louder than the silence in my house. You need to check everything. I had brushed it off at first. Chloe had always been so helpful, organizing bills, setting up my online payments, making sure everything was on autopay. She told me I shouldn't have to deal with all that tech stuff in retirement, and honestly, I was grateful at the time. But now, with that text still sitting on my phone, just close family, I was starting to feel like a stranger to my own life. It was just after midnight when I gave up trying to rest. I made myself some tea, sat at the kitchen table, and pulled my laptop out. I stared at the login screen longer than I care to admit. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, stiff with hesitation. Finally, I typed in my password. My checking account loaded first. At first glance, everything seemed fine. There were no giant red flags. But the more I looked, the more little things began to stick out. Small transfers, labels like home maintenance, emergency repairs, utility adjustments, all just small enough not to trigger suspicion, all just familiar enough to seem normal, unless you really looked. I clicked to see more details. That's when I saw it. Some of those payments were being made to a linked account. Not mine. Not under my name. Emily Gardner. I froze. Emily is Chloe's maiden name. I never linked her to anything, not intentionally, but there it was, plain as day. Her name attached to transfer after transfer. The amounts weren't massive, a few hundred here, 1,000 there, but they had been happening regularly, for months. My heart started pounding in my ears. I clicked over to my savings account, then my retirement. The same pattern. Little withdrawals, scheduled payments, slowly draining. It felt like the floor was falling out from under me. I sat back in the chair, clutching the edge of the table just to steady myself. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't Chloe paying a bill and forgetting to mention it. This was intentional, quiet, hidden. I thought of the day she offered to help me set up online access to my new bank. She said she'd handle the passwords so I wouldn't have to stress. She brought over cookies that day, sat at my dining table with her laptop, smiling the whole time. She had planned this. And Jason, did he know? That question hurt more than anything. I wanted to believe he was just blind, that he trusted his wife and didn't realize what was happening. But what if he knew? What if he looked the other way because it was easier? I got up and paced the kitchen. My chest felt tight, not just from panic, but from shame. How had I let this happen? For years, I told myself I was being generous, that it was normal to give to your children, to help them build their life. But I hadn't just given, I had handed over the reins completely. My house, my money, my trust. And now they were using it to build a world I wasn't even allowed to step into. A message from John popped up on my phone. Call me when you're ready. She knew. Somehow she knew this would happen. I didn't call. Not yet. I needed to gather myself. Instead, I went back to my computer and pulled up the property records for the farmhouse. That's when I saw something that made my blood run cold. The house was still in Jason and Chloe's name, of course. I had signed it over, but there was a note I hadn't seen before. A lien. A second mortgage, filed just 2 weeks ago, against a house that had been fully paid off when I gave it to them. I clicked through the legal documents, my hands shaking. Chloe had used the house as collateral for a private loan. She was already spending against it, using it as if it were hers alone. No mention of me, no protections in place, no backup plans, just her signature and Jason's. I sat in the dark kitchen, the laptop screen glowing in the silence, and I felt something inside me go still. Not angry, not sad, just still. They were planning this. Not just the dinner, not just the slow removal. They were preparing for something much bigger, something that would leave me with nothing. And they were doing it while smiling to my face, while bringing over pies for Thanksgiving, while calling me mom, while pretending to care. I looked around my kitchen, the cabinets I had picked out, the clock that used to hang in the old house, the faded photo of Jason and me on his 10th birthday. All of it surrounded me, but none of it felt like mine anymore, because the people I loved most had already started erasing me, and I had helped them do it, but not anymore. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked to the hallway closet. I pulled out the folder marked Legal. It held my old lawyer's business card, Mr. Dalton. He had handled our estate planning when Richard was still alive. It was time to make an appointment, time to stop pretending, Time to take back what was mine before they took the rest. I called Mr. Dalton the next morning, just after his office opened. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year, not since the house transfer was finalized. Back then, I was calm, certain. I thought I was giving Jason and Chloe a future. I thought I was making room for the next chapter of our family. Now, I wasn't so sure I'd even be part of that chapter at all. "Mrs. Gardner," Dalton said when he picked up, his voice as professional as ever. "It's been a while." "Yes," I said quietly, "but I need to see you. Today, if possible." There was a pause on the line, just long enough for me to hear the shift in his tone when he spoke again. "Come in at noon." When I got to his office, I sat in the waiting room holding my old manila folder like it was a lifeline. I could feel my heart pounding behind my ribs, not from fear anymore, but from clarity, from the weight of truth finally sitting in the open. Dalton greeted me with that same warm but distant smile he always wore. "Come in," he said, gesturing toward the conference table. "What can I do for you?" I sat down slowly. "I need to reverse a mistake," I said. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the message, about the slow exclusions, the hidden transfers, the second mortgage. I showed him the screen captures from my accounts, the paperwork I had printed, Chloe's name buried in the fine print, the forged convenience, the sweet manipulation. Dalton didn't interrupt. He didn't question the details. He just nodded and made notes, his pen moving calmly across the page. When I finished, he leaned back and folded his hands. "Do you still have access to your accounts?" "For now," I said. He nodded. "Then we have time to act, but we'll need to move quickly. Can we reverse the house gift?" "It's not easy," he admitted, but not impossible, especially with proof of financial abuse. We'll file a legal action to rescind the transfer on the grounds of undue influence. We'll also freeze any joint financial authorizations immediately. I felt my breath leave my chest like a slow exhale I hadn't even known I was holding. "And I want documentation," I added, "of everything Chloe has done using my name." Dalton nodded again. "Good. We'll gather evidence. Every account, every signature. And we'll need a private investigator, someone who can verify your claims, give us a clear trail." For the first time since this began, I didn't hesitate. "Do it," I said. "Then let's begin," he replied. We spent the next 2 hours reviewing accounts, revisiting legal documents, and initiating the first filings. Dalton was meticulous. He explained every form, every clause, every protection I still had. And for the first time in months, I felt like I wasn't alone in the storm. Just before I left, he paused. "One more thing," he said. "If Chloe is bold, enough to do this much without confrontation, she may try to push further. If anything shows up, mail, documents, requests, you bring them to me immediately." I nodded. "Of course." I went home that afternoon with a calmness I hadn't felt in weeks. Not peace exactly, but something sturdier, something like resolve. The house was quiet when I walked in. The ticking of the hallway clock was the only sound. I set down my bag and poured myself a glass of water. Just as I sat at the kitchen table, I noticed something odd, an envelope sitting on the counter. There was no stamp, no label, just a sticky note stuck on top. "Just sign whenever you're ready, Mom. It'll make things easier while we're away. Chloe." My stomach dropped. They were already gone. Off on their cruise. Floating somewhere in the Bahamas, cocktails in hand, thinking everything was still under control. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 crisp documents, neatly typed and professionally formatted. At first glance, they looked like basic updates, routine paperwork for estate management, household access. But I had learned my lesson. I read every line. Buried deep in the fine print was the real heart of it all, a full, permanent, irrevocable power of attorney. If I had signed those papers, Chloe would have gained full legal control over my finances, my home, my medical decisions, everything. She wouldn't have needed my death to inherit anything. She'd have it all while I was still breathing. I sat back in my chair, the paper in my hands shaking, not from fear this time, but from the weight of betrayal, from the boldness of it, from how close I'd come to handing over my entire life with a single signature. That's when I realized something important. They weren't planning to wait until I was gone. They were planning to erase me while I was still here. I looked around my kitchen again, the same space that had once been filled with warmth, with laughter, with family. Now it felt like a stage. a set they had used while rehearsing a life that no longer needed me in the picture. I put the documents back in the envelope, sealed it shut, and placed it in my filing cabinet under a new label, Evidence. That night, I changed every password I had. The next morning, I met with Mr. Dalton again. I handed him the envelope without a word. He read through the papers, his jaw tightening as he scanned the final clauses. "This isn't just unethical," he said quietly. "This is predatory." I nodded. "Let's move faster." He didn't hesitate. "We'll finalize the reversal filings today. Your accounts will be locked down by end of week. No one will be able to touch your money, your property, or your identity. Not without you." As I sat in his office watching the legal machine finally work for me, I felt a strange thing rise inside me. Not anger, not fear, power. For too long, I had kept quiet, thinking silence was the same as peace. But peace shouldn't cost you your dignity. They wanted to control everything, quietly. But now they had forgotten the one truth I was finally ready to act on. Quiet doesn't mean weak. They had no idea. While they were drinking champagne on some shiny cruise ship, laughing under the sun, taking selfies by the pool, thinking they'd already won, I was here, quietly undoing everything. It's funny, really. All their plans were built on one assumption, that I wouldn't fight back. That I was just a kind old woman who didn't know how to log into her own bank account. Someone they could push aside politely while keeping her close enough to use. But they underestimated me. In the days after I met with Dalton, everything moved fast. Faster than I thought possible. His office filed the official reversal papers. My financial accounts were frozen, no transfers, no automatic payments. Nothing moved unless I said so. Every authorization Chloe had was revoked. Every password changed. I wasn't just taking back control. I was closing every door they thought they'd left open. Dalton's private investigator started his work too, a quiet, polite man named Harris. He looked more like someone's uncle than a detective. But don't let the sweater vest fool you. He was sharp. He traced Chloe's financial footprint across every platform. Found credit cards I didn't know she had, loans she'd taken out using my address, little paper trails she probably thought were invisible. One morning, Harris called with a calm but heavy voice. "She listed the house as collateral for a second mortgage," he said. "Private lender, filed last week." My hand tightened around the phone. Did she mention how she got the house? She presented it as a clean gift. No mention of coercion, no mention of power of attorney paperwork, just a generous transfer from a family member. And the loan? Still in early stages, but she started the pre-approval process. I sat down slowly, letting the information settle. They were trying to build something on top of me. Build debt, build investments, build a future. And they thought I'd never notice, that I'd stay quiet while they carved up everything I'd worked for. But they forgot who built this family in the first place. That afternoon, I went back to Dalton's office. He didn't greet me with concern anymore. He greeted me like a partner, like someone who knew I wasn't just reacting. I was preparing. "I want to sell the house," I said. Dalton blinked. "Before they return?" "Yes." He leaned forward. "That's bold." "They were bold first." He smiled just slightly. "We'll make it happen." Within 48 hours, the house was listed, quietly off-market. No signs, no fuss, just a clean listing to a trusted buyer Dalton had worked with before, a young couple newly married with no strings and full cash. By the time Jason and Chloe's cruise ship pulled into port, the house was gone. Sold, transferred, paid in full. The money sat in a new account, under my name only. No joint access, no linked cards, no paper trail that led. Back to them. I had removed the ground they were standing on, and they didn't even know it yet. For the first time in months, I could breathe. It wasn't joy, not yet. But it was something close, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. I walked through my apartment that evening, small, modest, but mine, really mine. Every drawer, every photo, every dish. I had lived here before the marriage, before the kids, before the house, and now I was back. Not because I'd lost, but because I chose to come home to myself. I sat by the window as the sun began to set. My tea in one hand, the wind gently brushing the curtains. Somewhere in the distance, I imagined Chloe clinking glasses on the ship, planning her next move. Jason scrolling through his phone, detached as always, trusting that everything was handled. They had no idea. Not yet, but they would. Soon. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when I stood across the street from the house I once called home. The sky was clear, that early autumn kind of blue, the kind that makes everything seem sharper somehow. My hands were wrapped around a warm travel mug, not because I needed the caffeine, but because I needed something steady to hold on to. 2 moving trucks were parked in the driveway. A young couple stood near the front door, chatting with the realtor. She pointed to the porch swing. He smiled and nodded. They looked excited, like people who had no idea they were stepping into the final chapter of someone else's story. I watched them for a few minutes. Then I saw it, the familiar shape of Jason's car turning onto the street. Chloe was in the passenger seat. Her sunglasses were big and dramatic, her hair perfect. Jason was behind the wheel, one hand on the steering wheel, the other holding his phone. Their car slowed as they pulled into the driveway. And then it stopped. They sat there, not getting out, just staring at the house, at the trucks, at the couple, at the realtor. Jason was the first to move. He stepped out slowly, blinking into the sun. "Mom," he called out, spotting me across the street. His voice was a mix of confusion and growing panic. Chloe followed a second later. She looked around, then walked toward the house like she was trying to make sense of something that refused to add up. "Who are these people?" she demanded. What's going on?" I crossed the street. Each step was steady. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't angry. I was ready. When I reached them, I said, "You won't need to worry about managing anything for me anymore." Jason frowned. "What are you talking about?" Chloe's voice was sharper now. "Why are these people here? Why are there moving trucks? Where are our things?" "They're not your things," I said simply. "Not anymore." Jason looked confused. "This is our house." I looked him in the eye. "No, it's not." I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder, a thick, heavy, full of facts. "Here are the only contracts that matter." Jason took it. His hands shook as he flipped through the pages. Reversal of the deed, sale documentation, financial abuse report, screenshots, bank statements, every transfer Chloe made from my accounts, every forged signature, every sneaky login. Chloe snatched the folder from his hands. Her eyes scanned it faster than her brain could keep up. "This is insane," she snapped. "None of this will hold up. You're twisting things. We were just trying to help." "Help?" I asked. "Is that what you call draining my retirement account behind my back? Or forging power of attorney documents while I was still alive and well?" Chloe's mouth opened, but no words came out. Jason looked at the ground. I wasn't finished. I handed over the second folder. Slimmer, but somehow heavier. "If either of you want to contest anything, this is what you'll be facing in court." Inside were documents prepared by my attorney and the private investigator, a timeline of activity, a list of all unauthorized transactions, the attempted second mortgage on a house they no longer legally owned. Jason flipped it open, read 2 pages, then quietly shut it. "I didn't know it was this bad," he said. "You didn't want to know," I replied. Chloe's voice cracked. "You can't just take everything away from us. We built a life." "You built it with my money," I said calmly, "on my name. And then you tried to erase me from it." "This isn't fair," she snapped. "No," I said softly, "it isn't." Jason stepped toward me. "Mom, I never meant to hurt you." "But you did," I said, "by standing by while it happened." He looked like he wanted to say more, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe he finally realized there was nothing he could say that would undo what they had done. "You gambled with my trust," I said, "and you lost." Chloe looked like she wanted to scream. Her face twisted with rage she couldn't quite let out. Not here, not now. Not with strangers watching from across the street. The new owners were standing by the porch, their smiles fading, their polite glances trying not to intrude. "You'll regret this?" Chloe hissed. "No," I said. "What I regret is letting it go this far." I turned to leave. "Mom," Jason said quietly, "where are we supposed to go?" I didn't answer, because that was never really my question to answer, was it? They had made their choices. Now they'd live with the consequences. It didn't take long. That very night, my phone lit up with a message. Jason. The name I used to smile at. The name that used to mean warmth, family, Sunday dinners. Now it just meant wait. "Mom, please, can we talk?" That was all it said. I stared at the screen for a long time. The words didn't move. My hand didn't move. My heart barely moved. He called me Mom again. It was the first time in months. Funny how that word only returns when everything else is gone. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message came. I'm sorry, Chloe. She got carried away. You know how she is. I never wanted to hurt you. I could almost hear his voice, soft, low, trying to sound remorseful, like the little boy who used to hide behind my legs after breaking a vase. Only now, the vase wasn't a toy. It was my life. I still didn't reply. He tried again the next morning. Everything just spiraled. We didn't plan for it to go this far. We were scared. Money was tight. I thought we'd be able to fix it before you noticed. There it was. Before you noticed. That was the heart of it all. They never thought I'd notice. They never thought I'd wake up. They didn't expect me to check my own accounts or question the paperwork or hire a lawyer. They counted on my silence. They counted on my love. But love without respect becomes a weapon. Still, I didn't reply. Instead, I made myself tea, folded the laundry, called my lawyer to finalize the last of the estate protections. Every time the phone buzzed, I saw his name, and every time I turned the screen face down. That afternoon, I sat on the balcony of my small apartment. The breeze was soft, leaves rustled below. I watched children play in the courtyard, their laughter light and unburdened. I hadn't heard that kind of laughter in my own home in a long time. That night, Jason called. Not a text, an actual call. The phone rang and rang. I let it. I needed to hear it ring. I needed to hear the urgency in that repeated tone, the sound of someone who finally realized something precious was slipping away. I didn't pick up. The voicemail came a few minutes later. I messed up, Mom. I should have stood up to her. I should have stopped it. I was just tired. Tired of struggling, tired of trying to give Chloe everything she wanted, and you made it so easy. You've always been the one to fix things. You were always there. I guess I thought, I don't know, that it was just who you were. He paused. You always said quiet doesn't mean weak, but I didn't listen. I took and took, and now I don't know how to come back from it. He didn't cry, but I could hear the break in his voice, the fear, and still I didn't reply, because it wasn't my job to make it easier for him now. Not this time. I had spent too many years softening the consequences, carrying the guilt, patching over the damage with hope and excuses. But something changed when I signed those reversal papers. Something inside me stood up and said, no more. The next day, a handwritten letter arrived. Jason's handwriting. Careful, neat, like a school project. He wrote about growing up in that house, about the backyard birthday parties, the bike rides, the times I stayed up late helping him finish projects he forgot until the night before. He wrote about how Chloe made him feel like a provider, like a real man, but that the pressure got too big. That when I gave them the house, it felt like a relief, but also like a test he was destined to fail. You gave us a gift, and we turned it into a weapon. I don't blame you for what you did. I just hope that one day, maybe not now, maybe not soon, but one day you'll talk to me again. I folded the letter, placed it in the drawer, and that was that. Because apologies, no matter how sincere, don't erase the silence I endured. They don't erase the nights I lay awake, wondering why love suddenly had terms. They don't undo the way I stopped recognizing my own son. I knew he meant some of it. I also knew he meant for it to work. But there are some lessons people only learn when the silence stretches long enough for them to sit with themselves. So I stayed silent. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because I had nothing left to explain. Let them sit in the quiet now. Let them wonder what silence really feels like. Peace doesn't arrive like a thunderclap. It doesn't bang on the door or demand to be felt. It just shows up, quietly, slowly, like a soft breeze through a half-open window. At first, the silence after everything felt like punishment, the kind of quiet that echoes too loud. I'd reach for my phone out of habit, thinking maybe there'd be another message, another apology from Jason, but the screen stayed blank. Or worse, it buzzed with reminders I no longer needed. Bank alerts I had already locked down, calendar notes for family events that would never happen again. But over time, that silence changed. It became softer. It stopped echoing. I started sleeping better. My chest didn't feel tight every morning. I could walk around my apartment and not feel like I was waiting for the next emotional earthquake. The peace didn't come all at once. It arrived in pieces, like the way I started humming while making tea, or how I'd catch myself smiling at little things. A bird at the window, a neighbor's dog in a sweater, a favorite old song on the radio. One morning, I opened all the windows. The breeze came in carrying the scent of cut grass and something faintly floral. I made pancakes just for myself. No one to impress, no one to thank me or ignore me, just me, and that was enough. I started going for walks again, not with a purpose, not to run errands, just to walk, to feel my feet move and let my mind drift. That's when I saw it. The little bakery Richard and I used to visit. I hadn't been down that street in years. It was still there, still had the same blue sign, still sold the lemon bars he used to love. I walked in, bought one, and sat by the window. The taste hit me like a memory, sweet and sharp at the same time. I whispered, "You'd love this, Richard." And for a moment I didn't feel alone. Some days I visited the park where we used to sit. I brought a small blanket, a thermos of tea, and a book. I'd sit on our old bench, the one near the oak tree. The bark was rougher now, the tree a little more tired, but it was still there, and so was I. Once a little girl ran past me, laughing so hard she hiccuped. Her father chased after her, grinning. She ducked behind the bench and whispered, "Shh, I'm hiding." I smiled and played along. When her dad caught up, he winked. "You haven't seen a pink tornado come through here, have you?" I chuckled. "Not a thing. Just enjoying the peace." "Then I'll keep looking," he said as he scooped her up and spun her around. Her laughter followed them down the path like music. I sat there long after they left, just listening to the wind. At home, the apartment began to feel more like mine. Not just a place to stay, but a place to be. I bought new curtains, put up paintings I liked, not ones chosen to match anyone else's taste. I arranged the shelves with old books and small objects that brought me joy. A pebble from a beach trip, a seashell. From Jason's first vacation, a tiny ceramic cat I once bought for $1 and never threw away. Every object had a memory, but now they lived in my space, on my terms. Jason's letter still sat in the drawer. I hadn't read it again. Maybe one day I would. Maybe not. That wasn't the point anymore. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting people back in. Sometimes it's just saying, "I'm done carrying this," and setting it down for good. I had set it down. Some nights I lit a candle and sat by the window, not to think about the past, not to grieve, just to sit, just to breathe. That was my peace. They thought I couldn't survive without them, that taking back the house, the money, my independence would leave me broken. But they were wrong. I wasn't broken. I was free. Free from their manipulation. Free from the guilt. Free from the fear that saying no would cost me love. Because real love doesn't come with conditions. And real peace? It's not loud. It doesn't need to shout. It just arrives. One breath at a time. It's funny how people confuse silence with surrender. For years, I kept quiet because I thought it was the only way to keep the family together. I bit my tongue, swallowed my pride, and told myself that love meant tolerance, that mothers were supposed to give and forgive. But silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes silence is the loudest thing in the room. When Jason and Chloe came back from their cruise, they returned to a world that no longer belonged to them. They had bet everything on the belief that I would never speak up, never push back, never fight for myself. And they lost. The house was gone. The money was protected. Every document Chloe forged, every penny she moved behind my back, it was all documented, filed, and ready to be used if they ever tried to come after me. But they didn't. Not legally, at least. They knew better. What they didn't know was how much they had already lost. Not just the house, not just the lifestyle, but me. They lost the woman who always showed up, the one who stayed up late painting bedrooms, the one who gave without being asked, the one who forgave without being apologized to. That woman is gone. In her place is someone new, someone quieter, yes, but stronger. Someone who knows her worth and won't trade it for proximity. Someone who doesn't need a family photo on the mantle to feel whole. I never answered Jason's last message. I read it once, then deleted it. "Please, Mom, just give me one more chance." But he'd had 100 chances, and each one was chipped away by silence, disrespect, and the coldness that crept in every time they took more than they gave. I still see them sometimes. Not in person, but in the way people look at me when I walk past, in the whispers I hear from old neighbors. Some think I overreacted. Others say, good for her, but I don't need their approval. I don't owe anyone my story. That's the beauty of the quiet I live in now. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't require applause. It just exists. Like a locked door they no longer have the key to. Sometimes I sit by the window at sunset. The light comes in soft, golden, touching the floor in a way that feels like a blessing. I sip my tea and smile, not because everything is perfect, but because I am finally completely mine. They say time heals all wounds. Maybe that's true. But I think it's more than time. It's truth. It's choice. It's standing up for yourself even when your voice shakes. And sometimes it's choosing to walk away without slamming the door, just quietly turning the lock behind you. Let them say what they will. Let them spin their stories. I have no need to correct them, because the life I live now, the peace, the clarity, the strength, that is the quiet that speaks. And I'm finally listening. There's a certain kind of freedom that comes with no longer needing to be understood. For most of my life, I tried to explain myself. I tried to make people see my sacrifices, understand my intentions, appreciate the quiet things I did without ever asking for anything in return. But not anymore. Now, I live a life they don't see. Jason and Chloe, wherever they are now, likely still imagine me sitting alone in a dim apartment, bitter and broken, clinging to memories of a family that slipped away. Maybe they even comfort themselves with that image. Maybe it helps them sleep. But the truth is, I've never been more alive. I joined a small gardening club at the local community center. Every Tuesday morning, we meet behind the library where the soil is rich and the sun hits just right by 9 a.m. I planted herbs first, basil, rosemary, mint. Then came the tomatoes, marigolds, and finally a stubborn little lemon tree that reminds me a bit of myself. Slow to bloom, but strong. We laugh a lot, the women in that group. Most of us are older, grayer, carrying stories we rarely share but always sense in one another. We talk about soil and sunshine and what kind of mulch works best, but underneath it we're all survivors of some kind. And maybe that's why the garden feels sacred. I take walks with a woman named June. She's a retired nurse with a dry sense of humor and a deep love for crossword puzzles. She's become a friend, the kind who doesn't ask about your past, only cares that you show up. We trade soup recipes, swap books, and sometimes we just sit on the park bench together, saying nothing at all. And every Thursday, I volunteer at the shelter down the street. I organize donations, fold clothes, help young mothers pick out diapers and strollers. One girl, barely 20, told me she didn't know how to hold her baby without crying. I sat with her, held her hand, and said, "Sometimes, holding on while you cry is all you need to do." She cried harder, but she smiled too. That moment, that quiet, simple connection, was more real than any conversation I'd had with Jason in years. My apartment? It's small, but it's mine. No one else picked the curtains. No one else decided where the furniture should go. I wake up to light filtering through linen blinds I hung myself. I play records on an old turntable Richard gave me when we were dating. Billie Holiday, Patsy Cline, Sam Cooke, songs that know how to ache and how to hope. And on Sundays, I write letters. Letters I don't send. To Richard, to Jason, even to Chloe sometimes. It's not about reopening wounds. It's about letting the truth exist somewhere outside of me. I write them down, then fold the letters and place them in a box labeled, "For no one." It's not sadness, it's release. This life, this quiet, steady, beautiful life, it's not what they see. Because they never really saw me. They saw what I gave, what I provided, what they could use. But this version of me, the woman who sips tea while reading poetry, who tends to her basil like it's a child, who holds space for broken strangers and finds peace in candlelight, they don't see her. And they don't deserve to. Because peace, I've learned, isn't something you prove. It's something you live. And this life they don't see, is the most real thing I've ever known. I keep them in a shoebox. Nothing fancy, just an old brown box that used to hold a pair of boots from years ago. It's worn, the corners soft from time and use, but it does the job. Inside are the letters, all handwritten. Some on lined paper, some on the backs of old envelopes, some in little notebooks I used to carry in my purse. No one has ever read them. They're not meant to be sent. That's the point. The first one I ever wrote was to Richard. It was a week after I signed the reversal papers, after the sale went through, after the last document was sealed and filed. I sat in the living room, the radio playing low, the lamp casting that golden glow I always loved, and I just started writing. I told him everything. How I finally did what he always told me to do, stood up for myself, took back control, found my voice. I told him about Jason and Chloe, the lies, the betrayal, the cruel little smile Chloe wore the day she handed me those papers. I told him I missed him. That some days the only thing that kept me going was imagining what he would have said. "You were always stronger than you thought," I imagined him saying, and this time I believed it. After that, the letters kept coming. Not because I was angry, not because I needed to vent, but because it helped me let go. Every emotion I couldn't say out loud, I poured into ink. The things I never got to say when I was too busy fixing everything, smoothing over the cracks, pretending everything was okay. There's a letter to Jason I wrote but never mailed. I started it with "You were my baby boy." That alone made me cry for 20 minutes. I wrote about the nights I stayed up rocking him to sleep, about the time he scraped his knee and told me, "Don't tell Dad I cried." I wrote about the way he used to look at me like I had all the answers, and how slowly, over the years, that look turned into something else, something distant, dismissive. I wrote, "I wish you had loved me without needing to use me." It wasn't cruel, it was just the truth. There's a letter to Chloe too, short, blunt. I didn't write much because there wasn't much left to say. I wrote, "You mistook kindness for permission. That was your mistake." I haven't written her again since. Sometimes I write to myself. Those are the hardest ones, because I have to be honest. Not just about what they did, but what I allowed. How many times I ignored the signs. How often I traded dignity for peace. I write things like, "You kept hoping they'd come around, but hope without boundaries is just surrender." And, "You deserve softness, not survival." I fold those letters slowly, with care, like I'm wrapping up something sacred. Because they are. They're pieces of my healing. Not for anyone else. Not for forgiveness or approval. Just for me. Sometimes I imagine what would happen if someone found them after I'm gone. If they opened the box and read my heart laid bare, one page at a time. Would they feel shame, regret, understanding? Maybe all of it. Maybe none. But that's not why I write. I write because I survived. I write because I didn't crumble. Because I kept going, because I needed to give my pain somewhere to rest besides my chest. These are the letters I never sent, and writing them has brought me more peace than any reply ever could. It was a Tuesday afternoon, overcast, with just enough chill in the air to remind you summer had passed. I had just finished pruning the little lemon tree on my balcony when the buzzer rang. At first, I assumed it was June coming by with a fresh loaf of banana bread, or maybe one of the girls from the shelter dropping off the donation receipts. But when I pressed the intercom, the voice that answered made my hands freeze mid-air. "Mom, it's me." Jason. I hadn't heard his voice in weeks, not since the day they came back to the house and found their kingdom had fallen. I stood there for a moment, not answering, just listening to the static hum of the intercom. My first instinct was to say nothing. Let him wait. Let him walk away. But something inside me whispered, "See what he came for?" I buzzed him in. By the time he reached my door, I was already seated on the armchair by the window, a cup of tea in my hand. The apartment was still, warm, soft, untouched by chaos. He knocked once, then opened the door slowly like he wasn't sure he was welcome. He looked different, tired, older, like someone who'd finally seen the cost of something they thought would never catch up to them. "Hi," he said. I nodded, motioned to the empty chair across from me. He sat down slowly, his hands clasped tight between his knees. For a while, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked on the wall. A car honked in the distance. I took a sip of my tea. He glanced around the room, probably expecting to see photos of him and Chloe, but there were none. Finally, he said, "I didn't know where else to go." I raised an eyebrow. "Your wife didn't want to come?" His face flinched. "We're not in a good place right now." I didn't respond. He waited for me to say something, to offer comfort, a suggestion, maybe even an "I told you so." But I had none of that left to give. "She blames me," he said quietly. Says I ruined everything by not stopping you, but I didn't even know what she was doing half the time. I let the silence hang, not to punish him, but to give him space to tell the truth if he had one. I didn't come here to ask for anything, he added. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. For everything. Those words, I'm sorry, should have meant something. And maybe, in another lifetime, they would have. But now they just sat between us like a half-written apology with no stamp. You didn't stop her, I said finally. You let her treat me like a burden, like a wallet, and you stood there and let it happen. He looked down. I know. You let her strip me of every boundary I had. And now that she's gone and the house is gone and the money's gone, now you remember who I am? He didn't defend himself. He didn't argue. And for the first time in a long time, I saw something in his face I hadn't seen before. Regret. Real, raw regret. I was scared, he whispered. Scared of losing her. Scared of losing everything. And I thought you'd never fight back. I exhaled slowly. You were right about one thing. I never used to fight back. But that's not who I am anymore. He nodded. I see that now. There was another long pause. He looked at me like a man trying to rebuild a bridge without any tools. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I just wanted to say it, out loud, while I still had the chance. He stood, took a step toward the door, then turned back. You look happy, he said like it was a surprise. I am, I replied. He nodded again. Okay, I'm glad. And then he left. No begging, no breakdown. Just a man realizing that sometimes you lose things forever. I didn't cry after he walked out. Instead, I sat in the same armchair, watching the steam rise from my tea. A visit I didn't expect. A moment I didn't need. A peace I wasn't willing to trade. I didn't write about it in my letters that night. Some truths don't need to be put on paper. Some goodbyes happen in silence. And this one, this quiet final closure, was the softest goodbye I ever gave. I used to believe love had to be loud. Big gestures, sacrifices, holidays and gifts and pictures on the wall. I thought being a good mother meant giving everything, even the parts of myself I couldn't afford to lose. I gave time, money, attention, forgiveness, all handed over without question. I thought that was love, but now I know better. Love isn't in the things we give away just to keep people close. Love is in what we protect, what we nurture, what we choose to hold sacred. These days, I choose to love quietly. I don't call Jason. I don't check on Chloe. I don't scroll through old photos or reread their messages. I don't need to. That's not where my love lives anymore. Now, love looks like taking care of my little balcony garden. I whisper to my lemon tree when the sun hits just right. I talk to the marigolds like they're old friends. I water, prune, replant, not because anyone's watching, but because it brings me peace. Love is also in my morning routine. I make my coffee exactly the way I like it. 2 sugars, splash of cream. I sit in the same chair by the window and read the paper or a book or nothing at all. Sometimes I just let the light wash over me and breathe. No one asks me for anything in that moment, and that, too, is love. I've started painting again, not anything fancy, just small canvases, watercolors mostly. I paint landscapes, quiet places that remind me of dreams I used to have. I painted one of the bench under the oak tree in the park, the one Richard loved. I hung it in the hallway by my door, a quiet tribute. And then there's the girl at the shelter, Mariah. She's 19, just had a baby, scared out of her mind. I've been helping her navigate appointments, childcare, diapers, but more than that, I've just been listening. I bring her tea some days. We sit and I let her talk. That, too, is love. I don't expect anything back. I don't need a title. I'm not her mother or her savior. I'm just a soft place for her to land. And maybe that's enough. The world told me for so long that love had to be earned, that you had to prove your value over and over again. Be useful, be quiet, be agreeable. But real love doesn't ask you to shrink. Real love doesn't make you erase yourself. So now, I choose to love in ways that don't require sacrifice. I choose peace over performance. I choose boundaries over begging. I choose to love this life I've rebuilt, slowly, gently, fully. Maybe Jason thinks I've shut him out. Maybe Chloe tells people I turned bitter. Let them. The truth is, I didn't shut them out. I just stopped leaving the door open for people who only came in to take. And if that makes me distant, so be it. Because this distance is where I found myself again. And in that space, I learned to love without hurting, to give without emptying, to live without waiting for someone else to tell me I'm enough. I choose this quiet. I choose this love. There's a strange kind of power in speaking your own name out loud. Not for a form, not for a signature, not for anyone else's convenience, just because it's yours. One morning, not long after Jason's visit, I stood in front of the mirror and said it out loud. Olivia Gardner. I hadn't said it like that in years, not with intention, not with pride, just me to myself. Olivia, not mom, not grandma, not housegifter or babysitter or emergency contact, just Olivia. That name used to feel like something behind glass, something I lost pieces of with every favor I gave, every silent tear I swallowed, every time I let someone treat me like less to keep the peace. But now I say it like a declaration. Because I built this peace. I earned it. It didn't come wrapped in ribbon or applause. It came in quiet mornings, gentle routines, reclaimed decisions. It came in learning to say no, in learning to say nothing at all when silence spoke louder than explanations ever could. It came in letting go of anger, of guilt, of the need to fix what someone else broke. People still ask me if I talked to Jason, if Chloe ever reached out. I always answer the same way. No, and I'm at peace with that. Because peace, real peace, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of clarity. I am clear now. Clear about who I am. Clear about what I deserve. Clear about where my story begins and ends. And if one day Jason finds his way back, truly back, not for money or forgiveness or comfort, but for truth, I'll decide then what my heart has room for. But I won't wait for that day. My peace doesn't depend on it. Sometimes I think about the house. Not with bitterness. Just with distance. It was never about the walls or the floors or the backyard lemon tree. It was about how much of myself I tied into it, and how good it felt to cut the rope. Now I carry my peace like a quilt, stitched from every lesson, every ache, every boundary I finally learned to draw. And on the days when the old wounds whisper, when memory knocks soft and sad, I place my hand on my heart and say my name again. Olivia Gardner. Because there's strength in being known, even if the only one who knows you, truly, deeply, wholly, is you.